Hi, my name is Darryl Smith, and I'm the Executive Director with Crew in the High School Division. And I am so excited to be able to address you, as many of you all are making sacrifices and surrendering this summer to be a part of giving every person an opportunity to know the person of Jesus Christ. In that, I just want to talk to you a few minutes about the surrender life, that God has called each and every believer to a life that surrender, that our life don't belong to us, it belongs to Him, that we have been purchased with a price, and that price is the shed blood of Jesus Christ. I love what Paul says in Romans chapter 1. He say, Paul, a bondservant, and that word bondservant means a slave of Jesus Christ, meaning that we don't have any rights. And if we're going to reach the world, if we're going to go after the lost, we have to live a life that's totally surrendered to Christ. Now, the world says that we should live a successful life, but the scripture calls us to lead a surrender life. And in Luke chapter 14, Jesus is writing the disciples before he get to chapter 15, which we all know that he's talking about the lost. He talk about the lost coin, the lost sheep, and the lost son. But he's saying, look, if you're going to have a heart for the lost, if you're going to go after the lost, then you must be willing to live a surrender life. And Jesus says these words. He said there's three things that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to love me more than others. You're going to have to love me more than you love yourself. And you're going to have to love me more than you love material things or possession. And I just want to share that with you for a few minutes as you are preparing or you're on your summer mission project this summer. And it said, and now great multitudes was going along with him, and he turned and said to them, just imagine with me, there's a crowd of people that is walking with Jesus, and they're following Jesus, and Jesus stopped and turned to the crowd, and he said, look, here's the criteria if you're going to go with me and have a heart for the lost. He said, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sister, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. He cannot truly follow me wholeheartedly and impact the world and have an impact on the world without living a surrender life. Jesus said, unless you hate, that word hate means to prefer or to love less. He said, others, mother, father, brother, sister. Jesus is saying, look, if you're going to follow me wholeheartedly, you have to love me more than you love others. You're going to have to surrender others. You're going to have to surrender your life to me and not to others. I love what he says in Galatians 1:10. Paul says that, who are you trying to please, God or servant? Paul is talking about his biblical call, that God had called him. And he said, I did not confirm with flesh and blood that call. And then he go on to say, who are you trying to please, God or man? If you're trying to please man, you're no more a servant of Jesus Christ. We become a servant or a slave to whoever we want to please, because a slave pleases his master. And so he's saying that. Let me give you an illustration. I came on staff back in 1996, 17 years ago. My mother, she was born in 1925. So in 1945, my mother was 20. So in 43, she was 18, 42, she was 17. And back then, American systems did not allow her to attend college because of her ethnicity. And so there was a lot of things done that made my mom bitter and angry at the majority culture. And so when I decided to come on staff in 96, my mom was totally against it. She felt like that, Darryl, you shouldn't do it. Can you trust white people? And the story go on. And a lot of that was based on her own personal experiences in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and 70s. And there came a point that if I was going to reach the world, if I was going to have an impact and go after the lost, as Jesus talked about in Luke 15, I had to prefer Jesus over my mother. I had to love him more than I loved my mother. And that was hard because my mother had provided for me. She had raised me. She has taken care of me. But now God was calling me to a life that was a surrender life. And the only way that I could truly follow him and surrender, the first thing I had to do was love Jesus more than I love others, even if it was my mom. And for some of you all, God will call you after this summer to come on staff or to do something. And the people who have been invested in your life, you're either going to surrender to them and try to please them, or you're going to surrender to Christ. Secondly, he says, and even his own life. So first we see that if we're going to follow Christ or we're going to live a surrender life, we got to love him more than others. Then Jesus said you're going to love him more than you love yourself. Wow, love him more than you love yourself. We all have dreams and ambitions and desires and things that we want. There come a time that we love Jesus more than we love our own life, that we love him to the point that we're willing to surrender everything to follow him, our dreams, our desires, our goals. And you know, I'm an American and I'm a Christian, and so I love convenience, and I want to think about me more than I think about Christ. And really what he's calling us to live a life that is Christ-centered, not Darryl-centered or you-centered, but live a life that is Christ-centered. And I know in my own life there's been times that I wanted what I wanted, and it was more important than what Christ wanted. And so he is calling him to love himself less. And that's what Jesus said, that you got to deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me. And for me, we all have nets. He said that the disciples, they forsook their nets and followed him. What are nets in your life that will keep you from surrendering your life to Christ and following him wholeheartedly? For me, I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee. I came on staff in Chattanooga. And when God was calling me to my role and to move to Orlando, Chattanooga was a net. I didn't want to leave my hometown. My family was there. My wife's family was there. It was very convenient. My kids was growing up. They was in a good private school, and everything was going the way we wanted. And I had to make a decision to surrender my life and love Christ more than I love my own life, my own convenience, my own comfort, my own family, to follow him wholeheartedly. And then he go on and says that, look, you're going to have to count the cost. The surrender life is always a cost life, because the surrender life is a life of obedience. I love what Paul wrote about Jesus, who really portrays a surrender life in Philippians 2. It said that he became obedient unto death, even death upon the cross. He emptied himself. He surrendered his life and became obedient to death on the cross. Not until he died, but unto death. His obedience cost him his life. And so here in Luke 14, before Jesus released him and talked to him about having a heart for the lost, he said, listen, you're going to have to count the cost. You cannot start out, and when it get hard, you throw in a towel. He said, because people are going to laugh and make mockery of you. And so we surrender our life and follow Christ, and we know there's a cost to pay. And sometimes when God speaks, we end up in a lion's den. Sometimes God speaks, we end up in a fiery furnace. Sometimes God speaks as he spoke to Abram, and he don't even give you the whole picture. He said, trust me with the unknown. And it say Abram moved out not knowing. And we trust God with the unseen. It say Noah built an ark, the things yet not seen. But he obeyed in reverence and fear to God. And so there's times that God would speak to us, and he would call us to surrender. And it's not always surrendering in our convenience and comfort. I love to say that the will of God is not always comfortable. It's not always convenient, but it's always correct. And so God will speak to you and call you to surrender to things that are not comfortable and convenient, but correct. And thirdly, as we wrap up, he says, so therefore no one of you can be my disciple who does not give up all his own possessions. Here Jesus is not talking about reckless abandonment. He's not saying, I just want you to move and leave your house, but what he's saying, if I speak to you and I ask you for it, Are you willing to give it up? He said, you cannot be my disciple if you hold on to things more than you hold on to me. If you cling on to me more than you cling on to the old rugged cross, you cannot truly be my disciple. A surrendered life calls us to be willing to give up. In your life, I want to ask you, as you on summer mission this summer, what are the things that you're not willing to give up, that you're not willing to surrender, so you can follow Christ wholeheartedly? And one of the challenges that we have in the 21st century church, we are pursuing the American dream more than the heavenly vision. The American dream, in my opinion, is one of the #1 hindrance to us fulfilling the Great Commission, because we believe that God have called us to a successful life, not a surrendered life. He have called us to a surrendered life, not a successful life. And in that, success is not defined according to Jesus in Luke 12, or based on the abundance of the things that a man have in life. But success is based on obedience and walking with Him, and walking moment by moment in a surrendered life. And I love the pledge that we have in Crew. I'm willing to go anywhere He asks me to go. I'm willing to do whatever He asks me to do. I'm willing to say whatever He have me to say. And I'm willing to give whatever He have me to give. I want to encourage you to continue to walk in surrender on this project, but walk in surrender moment by moment as a way of life, as a believer and a follower of Jesus Christ. God bless you. Enjoy your summer.